Good evening, everyone. We continue from where we left off in verse 11. Remember, in verse 10, let me just scroll it up a little bit that we can see, because we will be talking a little bit about this particular aspect. In verse 10, we did talk about uh, God's anointed, and that it would be his king. And it's something in the future, anyways. But I just want to highlight to you this point so that when we get to the last verse of this chapter, that you do remember that the king is called his anointed. Now, in verse 11, after that conversation between Eli with Elkanah and uh, Hannah. In so doing, right after that conversation, Elkanah went to his home at Ramah. Now, the word in the Hebrew is this one here is Ramatah, but it comes from the root word Ramah. Ramah really means a high place. And if you recall, they were in the hills of Ephraim. And so this location is really located on the higher point of the hills of Ephraim. Now, the other thing that I think all of us needs to remember is that Ramah is also the home territory of Elkanah, or the home, I guess the homeland or the home uh, where Elkanah lived. And later in the book of First Samuel, you would find that Samuel himself will also make Ramah his home. And so we need to understand that Ramah is now going to be featured as an important place as we move on in this chapter. Continuing on, you see that, but the boy ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. Now we need to look at this a little bit. Before Eli the priest is to the face, right? To the face, which means that this boy is ministering, is serving the Lord. Now, on the surface, you could remember that this boy is 2 years old. So what is he doing in terms of serving the Lord? As a 2-year-old boy running around, he is now under the wings of Eli. And it seems that based on this verse alone, that anyone who is serving or ministering with Eli, or someone who knows what to do in the tabernacle, who knows the word of God, is considered as serving God. This is a inference, I would say, from this verse. And the contrast is in verse 12. The contrast here is that the sons of Eli were worthless men. I think we need to fix this a little bit. There is no word men here. It's by inference. The translators has put in there. The sons of Eli were sons of worthlessness. Worthlessness. And what would that mean is that they are good for nothing. Good for nothing. They are, well, worthless. They are, well, how should we say? Let me just bring this word up so that you would understand. This word translated as worthlessness is Belial. Belial or Belial, right? You find this word Belial as in the name of an idol god, is a worthless thing. It's good for nothing. And so the sons of Eli is described as good for nothing, and they are doing things that has no value. And in fact, it is contrary to what God wants to do. In contrast to Samuel, who ministered to the Lord before Eli, the priest. Now, the phrase here, they did not know the Lord, requires us to break this down. Number one, the sons of Eli are priests, right? Because Eli is a priest. The sons of Eli are priests. So how is it that they did not know the Lord? Now, this whole idea they did not know the Lord, we need to understand this word know. Okay. In Hebrew, the word know basically gives us the picture of having it is about recognition. It's not just about knowledge, it's about recognition. It's about acquaintance, acquainting themselves with God. And so if you look at it this way, they did not demonstrate that they recognize God, Jehovah, as God. That's what this verse actually means. They were good for nothing because they did not recognize or acquaint themselves with who God is, even though they are priests, because they are sons of Eli the priest. Now, this is important. And so what happened is that the custom of the priest with the people was that in, say, the shalem, the peace offering. In the peace offering, and if you go back and read Leviticus chapter 7, you would find a lot of the definitions there. They are given the breast and the thigh of the sacrifice. They are to burn up all the fat as a sweet aroma to God. Now, the complaint in verse 13 is this: when any man was offering a sacrifice, the priest servants would come while the meat was boiling with a 3-pronged fork in his hand. What is a 3-pronged fork? It merely looks like this, right? It's like a pitchfork, but it's a fork that what they do is they would poke into the pot and see what they can get out of the pot as they were cooking the rest of the meat. Now, unfortunately, as I mentioned to you, they were already given the breast and thigh, and they wanted more, right? They wanted more. What more? In verse 14, it says this: he would thrust it into the pan. The pan would be a small, I guess you can call it a small pot, right? A small pot. A basin, I guess a basin would be the same size, a small one that they used to cook for a small animal, or a kettle. This would be I would say a cooking pot, which is in contrast a bigger pot. And this one here, a cauldron. A cauldron is an even bigger pot, right? A bigger pot. And then finally, we have another word, pot, which is a huge cooking pot. Another huge cooking pot. And so this is essentially telling us that, they would have uh, a small basin, a bigger basin, a bigger pot, and an even bigger pot. So this is a contrast, and the animal that's inside would be, very small animal, and it gets bigger and bigger, and they are going to take a fork, a three-pronged fork, and they poke it inside and to take extra. Now that's what they're doing. They're taking extra. All that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. And thus they did in Shiloh to all Israelites who came there. In the sacrifice, that whatever wasn't sacrificed, they would bring back and eat. But the priests were already given, right? Were already given, and they're asking for more. Now, this is what it means by sons of worthlessness, Belial, where they are behaving with no recognition for God. Now, let me just put it back on the screen that we all bear this in mind. God's house, God's rules. Now, what do I mean by this? Leviticus chapters 1 to 7 describes very detailedly about all the kinds of sacrifices that is being done, the role of the priest, of the one who is doing it, what the priest should do, what the priest should get. And the point I'm trying to make is that all these instructions given in the book of Leviticus is clear, right? It's clear. But these rules are given by God because it is to be executed in God's house. The recognition of God would be that if this is God's house, then God's rules must prevail. That it is God's house. If you go into the palace of the king, you just need to listen to what the king wants done and just do it. And in this case, the sons of Eli, when the text says did not know the Lord, it's just that they did not recognize God as God in the tabernacle in Shiloh. And so what did they do? Verse 15, very quickly, before they burned the fat. Now, this is before. Before means, I guess you can say this word here, before, would be not yet. That is what it means. So they burn the fat is the activity, and before they burn the fat means when the fat was not yet burned. Now that is one aspect. Now this word burn is not just burn, right? The idea here is this is an important word. Cause to smoke. Cause to smoke. And this is a smoke sacrifice. Now you may ask, what is a smoke sacrifice? Notice this is the fat that is going to be burned. So we have the altar, right? The altar, and the fat is to be laid out with the meat. And the fat is to be burned, and with the burning, you would get the smoke that comes out, right? The smoke that comes out. But there is a smoke and there is the aroma. Now, in Leviticus chapters 6 and 7, you will find this phrase, the fat belongs to God. The word fat is the best part, the choicest part of an animal. And clearly, God wants the fat to be burned to create that smoke and the aroma that goes up. But before they did that, the priest servant would come and say to the man sacrificing, "Give the priest the meat for roasting. He will not take boiled meat from you, only raw." And this is additional rules. And these are what we call man-made. Now you're beginning to see how the sons of Eli did not know God. They didn't realize that you must do exactly God says. Now, exactly God says is not only the items that needs to be done, but the sequence that it has to be done. And the burning of the fat or the smoke sacrifice must come first before the division of the meat. Because the division of the meat only comes after God has taken his part. So this one says this, the number one for the sacrifice is for God. The number two is for the priest. And so you finish what God needs to do, then the priest will get to take his share. What did the sons of Eli do? The sons of Eli basically swapped this up. They took what they wanted and God can wait. That's the effect of verse 15. Verse 16 now says this. If the man said to him, they must surely burn the fat. Burn the fat again? Smoke sacrifice. The smoke sacrifice must be done first. And then, after that, right? After that, then you can take what you want. Huh? Nobody's going to stop you. And look at what it means by not knowing God. He would say, no, you must give it to me now. And if not, I will take it by force. And so man added to God's rules. Now that we look at it from this perspective, you would see that this is going to be very vile in the eyes of God. And obviously, God is not going to be happy looking down, smiling. He has someone whom he has appointed in the priesthood who ignored everything that was said, the order of what is to be done, and they place themselves higher than God in the work of the tabernacle. And so the question would be, why was the tabernacle there in the first place? Why were the priests appointed? What was the role of the priest? Is to serve God, not usurp the role of God. So moving into verse 17 is the judgment, and thus the sin. This word here is chatat, right? Chatat. And this would be equivalent to the guilt, right? The guilt, the condition of sin. And I think we can also say that this also means the offense. God has given his rules, right? All these. They didn't follow everything. Now, they still sacrificed, right? It's just that what did they not do? They shifted. They shifted the order. Everything God wanted to be done has a purpose. What comes first, what comes next, and that's God's rules. They shifted the order to place themselves more important than God. And so, in the eyes of God, in verse 17, the offense of the young men was very great, very great before the face of God, right? Before is to the face of God. And the men despised the offering of the Lord. Now, this word despise, we have seen this before in the book of Malachi, and this is to scorn, to spurn. What does that mean? It means um, to exchange the importance of the offering of the Lord to themselves. They were in contempt of God. Now, we see this word in the newspaper when a person is held in contempt of the court. What it means is the man who is held in contempt with the court is that the man disregarded what instructions the judge had given. And so if you treated the words of the judge as irrelevant and you don't care, the court has the powers to arrest you. Now, this is that same idea that a man held in contempt, right? I'll put it here there as well, held in contempt. The offering of the Lord. The offering of the Lord in the house of the Lord is very important, and nothing can be more important than God himself. And so when the man is said to be in contempt, they are placing themselves, they don't care about the importance of God, they scorn God. And that is a very serious offense. And hence, you find these words, very great, right? Very serious. We move to verse 18, and verse 18 says, now, the contrast between the sons of Eli and Samuel is so different. Now, Shemuel was serving, was serving before the Lord, right? To the face of the Lord. And he was a boy wearing a linen ephod. And so he is dressed for the job. You know, the Levites actually dress that way. And that would be, I would say, in our own day, we would call it the uniform, right? This would be the service uniform. Verse 19, notice Samuel was actually serving God, right? And now in verse 19, his mother would make him a little robe and bring it to him from year to year when she would come up with her husband Elkanah to offer the yearly sacrifices. Now, in this case, the mother would make little robe. Now, what do you mean by little robe? Samuel was a very young boy. And this is describing that over time, he is growing up and he is growing out, right? Growing out of the rope. And so the mother is very concerned, and the mother will bring the ropes year to year. It's very much like today when you have a little child, and as the child grows up, the growing up years will see a change of clothes at a tremendous pace, because the child is growing up, and the child would grow out of the smaller clothes, and so they need new clothes every year. Verse 20, when they come for the offerings and sacrifices, then Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, and he would say, may the Lord, well, let me just do this. The word give is not there. And I think children may not be a great word. Well, from this woman, let me just modify some of these words first. The word give. The word give literally means to I say it to extend compassion, to appoint. The word children actually means seed. Let me just use a different color. It means seed. And seed means descendants. And basically to say that may Elkanah have descendants from this woman, because this woman is a righteous woman. And may God continue to extend to you, or to appoint to you, Elkanah, descendants from this woman, and specifically this woman. Now, this last piece here, we would need to redo a little bit. In place of the one dedicated to the Lord, may not be quite accurate. And so let me just give you an alternative rendering, right? The alternative rendering of verse 20 reads this way. Because of the request, he, and this would be Eli, had requested of the Lord. How would you say? Okay, sorry. This would be this would be Elkanah, sorry. And so what happens is this entire expression, let me just mark it out. Elkanah is in turn of Hannah. Now, Hannah came, all right, in the previous chapter, asking for a son, and God heard her. And now that she has honored the vow that she had made to God and placed Samuel, into the hands of Eli, then she didn't have a son anymore, because the son Shemuel was put on loan or lent to God in that sense. So Elkanah and his wife actually made requests. And this time it would be Elkanah making the request that he is praying for more children. And so Eli again in his capacity, extends to Eli that God will, right? Actually, I would say, may the Lord. This literally means that God will give you children. Like in chapter 1, that Eli says that God will give you what you have asked for to Hannah. And so after this expression, they went on to their home. They went home, basically. They went home after that. Verse 21, the Lord visited Hannah. Now, this word is visit, which is pakat. Now, this is an important word. And so let me explain this. And since we are all learning a little bit of Hebrew, this is pakat, right? Pakat. Why is this important? Because if you look at Exodus chapter 20, and it says God will visit the third and fourth generation. This word actually means visit, but it has a negative meaning. It also has a positive meaning. And so the negative meaning would be to punish. The positive meaning is to, how should we say, is to bless, to bring good. And so we need to look at the context to understand when the word visit is used. Are we talking about God being angry and wants to visit the third and fourth generation because they have gone into idolatry? Or are we talking about something that's positive? So the Lord visited Hannah, and we can see by context, this word visit is a good visit, a good visitation. She conceived, she gave birth to 3 sons, 2 daughters. That in itself is, by context, something good. And that's how we would determine the meaning of this word visit. And the boy, Shemuel, grew before the Lord. I think this word here would be grew bigger. And in our terms, it will be grew up. That's why the mother has to bring new robes. Now, this word before the Lord needs a bit of explanation. Why? Because this word does not exist. This word is not to the face of God. This word means with God, accompanying God. Now, the word accompanying is good because he is in the tabernacle, the house of God. That is what this word means. So it doesn't really mean before the Lord as in to the face of God. It really means with God or accompanying God or together with God in the tabernacle. And hence the English has a bit of a challenge in some of these cases. Verse 22. We see in verse 22 now, Eli was very old. And what does that mean? Now, think of it this way. Whenever he talks about a man being old, Eli being old, in an Oriental culture, in a Hebrew culture, even in a Chinese culture, elderly people are designated to leave a heritage, isn't it? That they would have lived a long life and they would have left for the benefit of the people great things that they can remember by. Now, at this time, it is the it's not great things that he is leaving. It is unfortunate that he is hearing that his sons were doing to Israel everything. For some reason, he can hear all the complaints. And then there is this peculiar statement how they lay with the women who served at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Now, this word lay with the women, really in a literal fashion, right? Literal meaning is essentially to lie down with them. And it portrays something very lewd. It gives us a picture that they have transformed the tabernacle of God to one that is more pagan. And as you know, in the pagan temples, they would have temple prostitutes for the priests. And in this case, his sons are priests. And so they demanded this kind of services, which is completely outrageous in the lives of Israel, and of course, in the eyes of God. Verse 23, he said to them, "Why do you do such things?" And then the evil means the bad things, right? The bad things, the bad reports, the reports that I do not want to hear. And this word things is davar. We always see that when we study the prophet books, right? God's davar. And so this is divrim, right? Davarim, and these are the evil reports. And the word evil is ra'im. And so it's a lot, right? Evil reports, things that is no good, that I hear from all these people. Why do you do these? Why do you do these things? And this is verse 24. It says, "No, my sons, for the report is not good which I hear, that the Lord's people is circulating." This is a good translation. This word circulating means spreading. And all the reports that's being said, the Lord's people would be the Israelites. And it has to do with the tabernacle. And he hears them and he says, it is not good. These are bad reports. We move on to verse 25. It says, if one man sins against another, then God will mediate for him. And this word God is actually Elohim. And this word should not, I guess in verse 25, we should not read this as God. This should be read as judge. Now, why is this so peculiar? Because the word Elohim does not always mean God. And in this case, in the context of this word, it is not about God mediating. It's not about God mediating. This is this means the word mediate is judge. So if one man sins against another, the judge will judge for him. Because between people, right, between people, the judge will be the judge. So this word does not mean God. By context, it should mean judge, right? The judge will do the judging. But if a man sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? Now, the word intercede is to pray. Who can mediate, or how should we say? I guess the word intercede, right? Or pray for him. Now, understand that here you find that between man and God, what else is there? There is the ultimate final judgment, that it would be God who would then take action. That is what Eli means. If a man sins against the Lord, like they are sinning against God, who is going to do the mediation? Because it is not an issue for the judge. The judge cannot judge temple rituals, cannot judge the sins within the priesthood when they are not crimes for the judge to execute. And so if that is the case against God, who is there to mediate for him or intercede for him? So it's about the same principle here, right? Man sins against another, the judge will judge. Man sins against God, there's nothing else left. What is going to happen is that God will take his judgment. And so they would not listen to the voice of the Father. And finally, I want to highlight this to you. The Lord desired to put them to death. This is God's intent, right? This is God's intent. This is God is going to focus to put them to death, to die, to come to an end. That would be what's happening. Now, the contrast now goes to verse 26. Samuel, on the other hand, is a big contrast to the sons of Eli. The sons of Eli is going down the tube. The boy Samuel was growing in stature and in favor, both with the Lord and with men. And we need to now break down some of these words. Now, growing in stature is an English expression. Basically, this is an expression to be growing bigger, right? Growing bigger, growing up. That's one aspect. The second aspect is favor, both with the Lord and with men. This is a problem. This word favor is not grace. And so it shouldn't be read as favor. It should be read, the word here is tov, right? The word here is tov. It means good or betterment. And so if you read it this way, then you would find that he is growing up bigger, and there is no in, right? This word in favor is not there. And he's being good with God and with men. Good means functional. When God says it was very good, when he looked at the creation, That's the same word, good. And what does he mean by good? He means that everything that was created is functioning properly as intended. And so, in functional, in this case, he is functional with God and is also functional with men. Means he is very useful in his service to God, and his presence is also very useful for the people around him, and he's able to extend himself as a contributor in service. That would be how I would look at this verse. All right, that's verse 26. Verse 27 onwards to verse 36. We are going to leave this to tomorrow because verse 27 to verse 36 is one chunk where it is God now visiting Eli. Let me just put it down and then we'll end here. This is God pakat, right? Pakat, visits Eli. And this is by context is not a pleasant one. And with this, we come to the end of our session, ending with verse 26.